importantly, as interestingly, is I'm slightly puzzled by the Daily Mail lead this morning, which showed that drug running is moving from the big cities out onto the provincial towns. Doesn't come as a great surprise to me, but it is a massive, massive problem, drugs, and it seems to be that nobody has a solution, left, right, or centre. It's so worrying that almost all police chief constables are having kind of emergency sessions to work out how they can deal with this proliferation of crime in an area where the drug runners are very, very cunning, and there's more and more of them. On the line right now, I've got Peter Kirkham. He's a former detective former detective chief inspector at the Met. And good morning, Peter.
Good morning.
So, is there a solution to this, and how many police officers will we need to hire in order, on a sort of a UK-wide basis, in order to make some inroads into what looks like a very easy form of money?
That's the problem with it. It is a very easy form of money. The numbers are quite terrifyingly huge, and obviously that is a massive attraction for people to get involved in it. And it's also relatively straightforward if you're involved in drug dealing on the streets in London or some other city. Then to set up a county line isn't particularly difficult, and so we are seeing lots and lots of people entering that. But, is there an answer to it? Well, there's two questions, really. One, is there an answer to the drugs problem? Well, we've been at war with drugs for decades and go absolutely nowhere. And so you get into the whole conversation about, is it possible to keep people away from something that they like to use and which they don't see as having a major downside for themselves in the case of most drugs. And that's the legalisation sort of debate. The second question is, can we keep a bit of a lid on it and knock at least the most dangerous edges off it, and that's the violence that goes with it, that's the street dealing that gets in the way of other people's lives, and that's some of those other things, and the incredible amounts of money that get into the pockets of people doing bad things with it. Well, that was where police were basically until 8 years ago, and then the numbers got cut, and proactive police work, which involved a lot of work against organised crime and organised drug dealing, that has got cut savagely in the last 8 years, so the lid has been taken off, and so we're seeing this explosion.
Do you believe there is a solution to this then, Peter? You sound pretty gloomy about it.
As things stand, no. But there simply isn't. Things will get worse because we are seeing fewer and fewer police officers available to do everything. If you went back through the last week's papers and media reports and reports from HMIC and reports from government, you'd find probably 20 different things that different people are saying the police need to do better on this. Domestic abuse, hate crime, response times, investigating crimes, not screening things out, child sexual exploitation, you name it, every day someone is saying the police are failing at this.
Yep.
And every single one of those stories is presented as the police have got sufficient resources to do this. That's the statement that keeps coming out of the idiots at the Home Office and the liars in government. They've got sufficient resources to do this. They are just incompetent, useless and lazy, and it's their fault. Well, it isn't. There are 25% fewer people in policing, that's officers and support staff, than there were 8 years ago. And policing has got more demand, largely due to cuts in other areas that now mean the police are picking up the pieces of mental health, they're picking up the pieces of social services, they're picking up the pieces of child care arrangements, where the kids all go missing, and that's all linked into this as well. So we've got, far more serious harms than just the drugs involved with this county line stuff. We saw recently the first conviction for modern slavery, but they're actively now dragging more and more people into it that aren't total volunteers, and so every day we're seeing the police criticised. It's like you had reports from the health service saying, the health service isn't doing very well on heart transplants, it's not doing very well on diabetes, it's not doing very well on obesity, and those being presented as if the NHS have got loads of resources and they're just lazy, idle and incompetent. We don't see that with those stories. Every time there's a problem with the health service, and there's far fewer of those stories, it comes out with, poor health service, give them more money. Why have we got this anti-police prejudice from government and from the media that means every single time it's presented that way, the police service is in collapse? They are doing absolutely everything they can do and more, and they're being dragged from pillar to post. They are going sick in their droves. They are leaving in mid-service, so the service is getting hollowed out. It is in collapse, and yet we are continuing with this insanity. And now we've got county lines. What are they doing about county lines? What they're doing about county lines is very little, because there's very few of them to do it, and it takes time and effort to do it. Where they've got those resources, they can. We saw a county line up in Barrow-in-Furness, I think it was, in Cumbria, cleaned up this week, and we've seen 2 or 3 other stories. So where they can do it, they do. But these are hugely resource-intensive operations to sort it out, and they simply haven't got the resources.
Peter, do you know, a marvellous exposition of a position I 101% agree with you. And the trouble is, we're spending all the money on the NHS. Nobody seems to give a damn about law and order. That was Peter Kirkham, former Detective Chief of Inspection at the Met, and very, very gloomy about the explosion of drugs and many other things. Well, after the break,